B is Janice Arnold-Jones. Welcome.
Good morning, Michael. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Good to hear your voice again. Janice Arnold-Jones is running for Congressional District 1 on the Republican side, and she is one of our favorite people to talk about policy issues. So help us out a little bit here with redistricting. Are you still going to be living in your district by the time they get done, Janice?
My guess is, Michael, that indeed I will still be pretty muchly in the center of Congressional District 1. Now, I want to just caution our listeners that there is no requirement for a member of Congress to actually live in the district that they represent.
I didn't know that.
Wow.
And they just have to live in the state. The congressional rule is that the voters understand what they're getting. Thus, you got Hillary Clinton for the Senate in New York. So, but as far as the district goes, I still see Albuquerque getting, or CD1 getting a little bit smaller. And the big debate will be, will it pick up Rio Rancho? Will it lose Torrance County? And what will happen to Valencia County? And these are all the adjoining areas.
Do you have obviously you're looking at the rolls. Does Rio Rancho look attractive to you?
Oh, sure, it does. It would make, if you added Rio Rancho to CD1, it would actually make CD1 more Republican by numbers, but still in the minority.
Oh, okay. Now, this is being overseen by Ben Ray Lujan Jr.'s father, Ben Ray Lujan Sr., who you know quite well from having worked with him 8 years in the legislature.
Yes. And we should talk about some of the things he's doing right now.
Yeah. Tell us, enlighten us.
Boy, he's made me mad.
Well, now, I have to give you a quote. We didn't cut it out and immediately ready to play it, but Terry McMillan said on this show about an hour ago, said, boy, if we had just elected Joseph Cervantes as Speaker of the House, I don't think we'd be going through these things.
There you go. There you go.
Interesting, huh?
So before we get more to the CD1 race, Janice, and your possibility you heading to Washington to represent the state of New Mexico as a congresswoman, let's talk about what's going on in Santa Fe, because you are a veteran of those wars. What's going on from your perspective?
Well, I would say there is an overtone of both sides holding back to do nothing so that the nothingness can be blamed on the other side. And as you know, that just gets me riled up because the citizens of New Mexico deserve better than that. And strategically, you can play it that way, but we have real issues today. We have people who are losing their houses. We have people who are trying to sell their houses so they don't lose everything, but they can't. And it's pretty desperate. And so that's, I resent that, don't you?
I do, and I think that there are some proposals, obviously, that the governor has put forth that are controversial, at least amongst the partisan Democrats. I think there's a lot of proposals that the Democrats agree with, and where both sides agree, they just need to get her done. But instead, they play poker and they horse trade, and a lot of times, if they can't get their way on some things where there is division, they choose to do nothing. And I think it's true of both sides.
I'm afraid that is true. And worse than that right now, so let me chime in for Governor Martinez right here. There has been much criticism in the Albuquerque Journal that she has overloaded the agenda. I was flabbergasted that statement came out because I sat in each special session presented by Bill Richardson. And there was one special session, I believe we ended up with 150 items on the call because he kept sending them down by special message. And each one of those, as long as the bills were related to the call, went immediately to committee. They didn't go to Rules Committee. They did not.
And for our listeners, Janice, what does it mean when a bill goes to Rules Committee?
Well, right now it means it's going to die.
Okay.
In a special session, the rule is that the legislation to be considered will be on the governor's call. So all bills must relate to that. Anything else that does not clearly relate to the items on the call go to rules to be, that committee determines whether or not the bill is germane. And so if it is on the call, which in this case, all of the legislation that, with the exception of one piece that I've seen, related to the call. I can't understand why they have been sent to rules. And further, I can't understand why the fight was not mounted at the time it was referred to.
So Janice, Michael.
Well, that fight. Well, now, how can you fight, Janice?
Oh my goodness, the members on the floor, all of them, and I know that there are Democrats who don't agree with this either. You have to stand up and challenge the chair. But you have to know enough about the rules to stand up and challenge the chair and say that's an inappropriate way to deal with this bill. It needs to go to committee.
Well, and I'm going to sound like I'm putting in a pitch for Janice Arnold-Jones' candidacy for Congressional District 1, and that's only because I'm putting in a pitch for Janice Arnold-Jones for Congressional District 1. But there's nobody, in my opinion, who knows more about rules and parliamentary procedure. I mean, you go to Washington, Janice, you're not going to be confused by all the rules and processes back there, are you?
Well, I'm sure that there will be one piece, but, knowing the rules, and this is hardball, so, and I don't mind playing a tough team, but if you don't know the rules as well as the other team, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
And that I don't care what and I hate the sports analogies, but it's true here.
We love them.
I know you do.
We love the sports analogies.
But you need to know the rules, and there is nothing wrong with using the rules. And in this case, Speaker Ben Lujan has broken the rules, but nobody knew the rules well enough to object until And here's the fine point: they finally objected in Rules Committee, but that's not the time that you challenge the rules. You challenge the rules at the infraction.
Okay, now the Wall Street Journal said that 27% of New Mexico jobless claims were paid in error. How in the world can we not pay $1 out of $3 in error? Is there any way to get that straightened up? Is Washington looking at the unemployment regulations and stuff?
Well, I read this story, and our Workforce Solutions Department has just been a quagmire, and straightening it out will be difficult. But to have that higher percentage of error rate begs a whole bunch of questions. Was it intentional? Was it just? You had an article on stupid the other day. And I'm wondering, but I know, and here is the place that. When you are an employee and you are laid off, this is where you go, and yet you have to sit on the phone for 4 hours to talk to somebody. There are a lot of problems here, and the error rate. I just can't explain that without digging into it. The first thing I would look at are the programs inappropriate, the databases that back it up. Did that create the error? I just don't know.
How about an audit from Hector Balderas?
Well, I think an audit from Hector would be helpful here.
Yeah.
In defense of the auditor's office, I'm not sure that they have the budget to actually do this. And I want to bring up a really important point about regulation in other offices and caution all of the listeners that we are now so complex in our rules and regulations that legislatures and Congress will pass laws, and the agencies that are supposed to impose them will simply shrug their shoulders and say, well, we're not going to deal with that because we don't have the money to enforce it.
So, Janice, Michael and I got into an argument the other day. Now, I know this is shocking to you.
We got into an argument?
We got into an argument, and it was actually on the air, and because I'm extremely optimistic, and Michael's less so, but I am really optimistic in the wake of this Solyndra scandal on the which is basically $500 million just basically flushed down the toilet by the federal government as the Obama administration and the Bingaman Energy Committee made a loan guarantee to a solar company out in California that went belly up within 14 months. I think that it points the way, the direction for the voters. I'm going to play an audio clip of the president last year at the Solyndra factory pointing what he thought was the way of the future, and then get your comment on it.
Companies like Solyndra are leading the way toward a brighter and more prosperous future. And we can see the positive impacts right here at Solyndra. Less than a year ago, we were standing on what was an empty lot. But through the Recovery Act, this company received a loan to expand its operations. This new factory is the result of those loans.
So, Janice, your Congresswoman, Janice Arnold-Jones, what say you about the federal government deciding that it's going to make investments, make loan guarantees to energy companies, whether it be ExxonMobil or Solyndra?
I say, so how good at business is our government? And it's not very good. Anybody who looked at this program would have said, my goodness, without federal dollars, this company could not take these steps, nor will it survive. And why, Jim, you're an investor. Why would you do that? And why would you take taxpayer dollars and do that?
For political purposes, because you're incompetent.
Bingo.
Because it's somebody else's money.
It's somebody else's money. This would have happened in business if there was a business case for it. And while I'm at it, let me remind you, we have gone through this green energy policy, and we are 100% wholly dependent upon China for the rare earth elements, for the very components that goes into Solyndra's manufacturing plant. How do you reconcile that?
I don't.
So Janice Arnold-Jones, it's 45 minutes past the hour. Do you think that James Carville was correct that you probably ought to run through the halls of the White House firing people, especially economists?
Well, in this case, yes, because these economists, and I like ivory tower economists, but I'm very fond of the economists who actually have real jobs, and I don't think any of those are in the White House.
Janice Arnold-Jones, we're talking with her. She is the candidate on the Republican side for Congressional District 1. We're going to have more with Janice Arnold-Jones after these messages. You can go to newsnm.com and follow along. We sure do appreciate you being out there, especially our new affiliate, KIVA in Albuquerque, 1550.
AM
1550. We'll be right back.
You're listening to News New Mexico, where it is understood that whenever you see a successful business, someone once made a courageous decision.
She doesn't want to talk. She needs to talk.
Nobody needs to talk.
No, we need her to talk. We're talking. We are News New Mexico. Jim Spence is here. I'm Michael Swicker. We got Patrick Sosa as our producer-director, and we're talking with Janice Arnold-Jones. She is a Republican candidate for Congressional District 1 and a proud alumnus of the Albuquerque Bulldogs, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Janice, talk a little bit. We've talked a little bit about your background and your experience as a legislator. Talk about your personal background. Obviously grew up in
She
the
was
Albuquerque
born
area.
as a young child.
I was born as a young child, absolutely.
And then what happened?
Well, very quickly, as you know, I was an Air Force brat, and my dad was killed on active duty testing an airplane that was eventually used in Vietnam very successfully. And because of that, my mom threw a dart at a map and decided to move to the city closest to the dart that had a university and an Air Force base. And it turned out to be Albuquerque. She's a very gutsy lady. She's 86, and she's here in Albuquerque today. And so I went to Albuquerque High, married my husband, John Jones, who joined the Navy for 23 years. We trounced around the world. In the middle of all of that, as you know, I like to do a lot of things, and so I was reinventing my career every time we changed stations. So I have kind of a diverse business background, but I still managed to open and own a couple of businesses along the way, and one lasted over 20 years, which was really quite remarkable to me.
Well, what's more remarkable is that you lasted as a soccer mom.
Well, now, and I was not necessarily a soccer mom, except for the very first year. I was a soccer coach.
Well, that's what I actually meant to say.
Of course you did.
So you coached those soccer kids. You didn't just take your kids to practice.
No, absolutely. Wherever we moved, it was always after the registration, and the standard line was, Mrs. Arnold-Jones, we would love to have your son play if you can coach. And, oh, by the way, you need to be a certified coach. You can do that, can't you? and I think I was a cheerleader in high school, and I loved every second of it, but I think I was really a frustrated athlete because at that time there really were no athletics for women.
Well, one of the things I worry about with Congress, since you're running for Congressional District 1 in New Mexico, is I think it's less than 10% have any really connection with the military. And I feel like if you have about between 85 and 90% of the people making the laws of America, and they have no experience being, involved with the military, how do they understand what's going on?
I'm with you. I think that is cause for tremendous concern. And the reason I think there is concern for it is there are going to be some very significant questions coming up, not the least of which may be pulling back some of our forward bases and looking at defending the nation from a space perspective. And these, if you have no background in what the role of the military is, I think those will be very hard questions.
So if we've got listeners and they're listening to Janice Arnold-Jones and kind of like the sound of your voice and the way you think about things, and they want to get involved in your campaign, they want to help you, how do they get in touch with the Janice Arnold-Jones campaign to be a part of what you're trying to accomplish?
Well, I would say please come on board. I have terrific volunteers. The website is www.janice2012.us, www.janice2012.us. And I have never held back from giving out my cell phone number, 505-379-0902. I want to talk to you.
And what was that cell phone number again?
505-379-0902.
Now let's talk a little philosophy here. Anybody that would like to work in a campaign, a year from now, you would accept them. You would be glad to have them coming into the general election a year from now. But if they really want to get their feet wet, now's the time to join a campaign, whichever one it is. Is that not right?
It is, and absolutely. And even more important, the decision on which candidates will run are being made right now. And sometimes those I will tell you all the time, that decision is based on money, and at least at the federal races. And if you are concerned about who might be the candidate, this is the time to not only volunteer, but put your money where your mouth is, because otherwise the choice will already be made for you.
So, Janice, I'm listening to you talk about the absence of athletic programs for females back in your day, and of course, all of us who have daughters kind of resented that. Life has changed. About half the people admitted to medical school now are female. About half the people admitted to law school are female. But we are still underrepresented in the halls of Congress. Not enough good, high-integrity females in Congress. Do you see that slowly changing?
I do see it changing. And there are still challenges for women, and I am one of them. I wanted to have a family, so it means that my ability to serve, you either give up your children or you wait until you're a little bit older. And those are harsh choices, but that is the choice.
But isn't it the beauty of being a little older? Look at all the wisdom gathered during those years.
I love how you put that.
Oh, but it is true. I mean, I don't like the fact that I'm falling apart physically, and although I do have more hair than Michael Swickard, but I think that the wisdom that comes with maturity is something that is very, very valued. And I also think that women, generally speaking, have much more integrity than men. So I am inclined to vote for women, all things else being equal.
I would say, can I change your registration?
Yeah. Now, that's the one thing. Now, I will say, Michael and I we're not in CD1 anyway, but as independents, we can't vote in the primaries. But I guess that's pretty much next battle for Janice Arnold-Jones, isn't it?
Well, that is a statewide battle, and when you look at the fact that almost a third of all voters in New Mexico are now neither Republican nor Democrat, they are completely disenfranchised from this primary process that you pay for, by the way. And
we also pay for. Got about a minute left. Tell us what's on the minds of the electorate right now. You go out every day, talk to them.
Well, I would say what's on their minds is they are furious. They are furious with the president. And they are scared to death that they're not going to be able to pay their bills. And good Americans pay their bills. That's the majority of them pay their bills, and they are facing a situation where they have made hard choices. They're selling off everything they can. There's nobody to buy, and they are frightened. And
the correct policies in Congress can reverse that.
Yes, they can.
So, Janice, is it your interpretation of the loss of the Democrats in Congressional District Number 9 in New York a seat the Democrats have held since 1923, that reflects what you just said?
Absolutely.
The anger with the president?
Absolutely. They are furious. You know, and here's the problem. When you promise hope and change, but you deliver the same old thing, people feel betrayed.
Very much so. Janice Arnold-Jones, running for Congressional District 1 on the Republican side. Thanks so much for what you're doing, Janice.
Well, thank you, and thank you for coming to Albuquerque with News New Mexico.
We are glad to be there. We thank the people at KIVA for inviting us. We'll have more.